morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. Welcome to our church, to our sanctuary. Yay. Today we celebrate reopening that sanctuary to the congregation, something previously taken for granted, physically being together, now is a real cause for celebration, isn't it? And yes, we still are WUCC, a congregation which welcomes all forms of diversity in beliefs, in demographics, and today, in particular, diversity in sexual orientation and gender identity. So, welcome all. I'm Suzanne Molnar, today's worship associate, and also a member of the Welcoming Congregation Committee. And my pronouns are she and her. We have a bunch of announcements, so patience. Today, during coffee hour, there'll be a special discussion around the book, The ABCs of LGBTQ by Ashley Mandel, sorry. We invite you to the discussion, even if you've not read the book. The discussion will be both in person and on Zoom in the adult RE room. And the Zoom link can be found in the newsletter and the website. There's a new adult RE exploration class, Christian Roots, Growing Branches, starting on the 7th, Tuesday, at 6 to 7:30, and running for 3 weeks. Conversation around adapting to Judaism for people from a Christian background. Not that others aren't welcome to, but that's a special focus. Announcement from Alice, who coordinates the food baskets for Food Pantry. Now that the church is open for the congregation, she's asking people to bring food inside, not to leave it on the porch. She worries about it being out there on the porch. Let's see. Family Promise. It's almost Family Promise Week. Our week is December 19th to the 26th. Yes, that's over Christmas. Participating families are being housed in an extended stay hotel and are not sheltering at church. But we do need to support the families with evening meals. The hotel has a kitchenette, and we can support families with prepared meals, grocery cards, gas cards, gift cards to local restaurants, and Grubhub DoorDash cards. Scan the QR code with your phone to sign up. One nice thing, you can deliver cards any day of the week to the day center on Middlebrook Pike. The staff will ensure that they're delivered to the families for the proper night. If you need someone to deliver your cards or meals to the day center, contact Elizabeth Corbett, and her phone number is in your order of service. Okay, next. I think that's it. Have I forgotten something? No. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I wish I could see all your faces, but thank you all for wearing masks. And I want to welcome our virtual attendees too. Just so all of you in the room know, we're not the only ones who are at our service this morning. We have a number of people who attend regularly virtually. So our coffee hour will include them as well. So just a welcome to our virtual people as well. I know most of you. I'm Reverend Carol Bedeau. I am privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she and her. I have one other thing I want to tell you about, which is our Christmas Eve plans. Okay, so we're going to have music in our indoor services. I'm sorry, you don't get to sing. You can clap, you can wave your hands, but you don't get to sing. The choir will be singing. So for Christmas Eve, which has usually got so much singing as part of it, we've decided what we're going to do is we're going to do that part outside as Christmas caroling outside. So on December 24th at 4 p.m., we'll be moving towards sunset. At 4 p.m., we'll have cocoa and caroling and cookies outside. So a lot of times in the past, people have brought Christmas cookies. Feel free to bring Christmas cookies. We will spend a little time, that gives us some gathering time outside to sing and enjoy some time together. And then we're actually going to do a candlelight processional into the sanctuary, kind of as a way to rechristen our sanctuary for the holidays this year. So the actual service will go from 5 till about 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve on the 24th. That's a Friday. All right. We are going to invite the bowl to sound in this room for the first time together in a long time. It's been 21 months since we did this in here together. So I invite you to imagine the sound as I invite the bowl to sing. I invite you to imagine the sound sort of reverberating through the room, connecting us all, and connecting us to those who are outside this room, who are listening virtually, those who are part of this community but are not here or virtually attending today that are with us in spirit, and all those in the past, our ancestors, and all those yet to come who will come into this sanctuary. Let us take deep breath. Find your center and feel a sense of being welcomed. All right, and now I've completely forgotten the singers because we haven't done this in so long. I'm going to invite the choir to come up and invite you all. Do you all feel more centered for singing now? Good. Good. Come on up. We're going to sing. Please, those of you who are here who love this song and who want to sing, try not to. Just clap.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And just because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. That's from the Passover Haggadah.
So today we are having a service that is really part of our welcoming congregation programming. And our welcoming congregation is something we talked about a lot. And in specific, today we're going to talk about what welcome, the word welcome means, what it means to open ourselves to those around us. Sometimes it's to those we know already and to those that we actually don't know. One of the key aspects of our welcome here at Westside is opening our minds and our hearts and our hands to the LGBTQ plus community. And today we're going to talk about how we might do that even more fully as part of the work. And today we want to honor one of the welcoming days of observance, which is, there are a series of days during the course of the year that we note to help honor and pay our physical presence to the LGBTQ plus community. So the last Wednesday, or the first Wednesday in December, which was last Wednesday, December 1st, every year is World AIDS Day. World AIDS Day is an annual opportunity for people around the world to unite in the fight against HIV and to show support for people living with HIV. And it's also to commemorate those who have died from AIDS-related illnesses. This was begun in 1988, and it was the first ever global health day. And here's just a few statistics about HIV/AIDS in our world now. Some of these come from last year. As of 2020, 37.7 million people worldwide were living with HIV. 1.5 million new infections were recorded last year. About 73% of those living with HIV are currently accessing treatment, and yet about 680,000 people died last year of AIDS-related illnesses. So as we light this candle, let us remember that HIV/AIDS is still very much a part of our local and our global community. And let us honor the lives of those who are living with the illness and also those who have died as a result of it. We also honor those who, with the illness or not with the illness, are struggling to continue to provide better access to treatment, to find better treatments, and to improve the lives of people living with HIV/AIDS. So welcome is a topic that has a special meaning in UU communities that isn't necessarily what the broader community thinks of when they think of the word welcome. And I know that it's something we pride ourselves on. Many of you know about the work of our welcoming congregation team, which is our group that takes as its responsibility educating about LGBTQ plus issues and keeping those alive in our congregation. And I know many of you have heard us talk about how in recent years the denomination has asked that we renew our welcoming congregation status every year. So one of the things we did in the last few months, and that we're going to talk about again a little bit today, is this book, which we read. Some of us read this book. It's called The ABCs of LGBT+, and it's by Ashley Mardell. It's really a fun book to read. It's kind of a little bit of a cross between a dictionary and an encyclopedia and a biographical narrative. But it's really, it explains a lot of concepts and gives us a lot of language tools for what are really wildly expanding definitions in our world right now of gender, sexual, and affectional identities and orientations. Okay, the book itself, I'm going to give you a quick little summary of the book. It's broken into a few sections. The first section, which is introductory, if you didn't actually read the book, if you just actually owned the book, for the glossary that's in the first section, it would be extremely useful. Okay? The first section, the glossary, the index or the intro and the glossary is 10 pages long of terminology. So let that sink in for a second. There are 10 pages worth of terminology. I didn't know most of it when I first opened the book. Most of us who talked about the book didn't know these terms. So there is a lot of new terminology and a lot of new concepts just to have access to as a start. The second section of the book explains the kind of spectra that are rapidly replacing binary. In the past, we've had very binary either-or understandings of gender, affection, and sexuality, and these are changing. So that's in here. And if you're curious about the spectra, at the back of the sanctuary on the bulletin board, we have our welcoming bulletin board, and you can look at the unicorn, the gender unicorn. I think it's an identity unicorn. Identity unicorn. Have I got that right, Morgan? The unicorn is very helpful. If you don't know about the unicorn, look at the unicorn on the bulletin board. Okay, so there are these multiple spectra, and any one of us could have 4 or 5 or 6 different identities we're locating ourselves in at any time. The third section of the book explores specifically gender identities, which is where a lot of the terminology is useful. And the last section of the book does that same thing for sexual and romantic identities. All right, I'm not going to go through explaining all this stuff right now because I think it's probably more important before we even tackle all of that. It's more important to address the issue of what it feels like to feel welcoming. You can get the book pretty cheap on Amazon. We have multiple copies here. You can borrow one if you'd like to look at it. But let's talk a little bit before that about welcome. We pride ourselves on being welcoming. We pride ourselves on that feeling of hospitality, of community, and how important it is to be together. It's sort of central to our identity as a community. And over the last couple of years, many of us have felt isolated and lonely as we waited for this space to be open, to come together in person again. So today, as we meet here for the first time in the sanctuary since literally March 8th of 2020, March 8th of 2020 was the last time we had a service in this room. I know that many of us are having a mix of feelings being here. There's a mix of feelings, right? There's excitement. I know when the choir started practicing this morning, I heard a couple of people say they were feeling kind of nervous. I got things out of order because this is so disorienting to be up here again. There are a mix of feelings about being back in this room. Some of us in the room might have a little bit of trepidation or concern. We're not really certain about what the risks are of being back together, especially with new variants. We're not sure, what to expect in the coming months. Many of us who are attending virtually are definitely not yet ready to come together in person. So we all have a different sense of safety and security around this idea of welcoming one another back into our spaces. So I want you to think about that for a minute. How do you personally weigh the risks and rewards of being with other people? Now, as we've seen repeatedly throughout this pandemic, our sense of safety, our personal sense of safety, is definitely influenced by a number of variables that aren't the same for everyone. How well we know someone that we're considering spending time with. So we inherently are going to trust those we know well better than strangers, probably. We also try to use markers of familiarity to gauge security, to help us predict behaviors that we want to know about but cannot necessarily control or see. They happen off screen, right? So that means that we might trust a certain business more than another business. We might trust certain family members who feel safer to us to be around. We might trust certain situations that seem more well controlled. We all have our own personal mix of things that go into us feeling secure enough to welcome an experience or a person near us. And the pandemic has made that more obvious, but it's actually true all the time if you think about it. That's always true. COVID has just made us more aware of it. So one of the things that I hear the most often about what people like at Westside is they say that they really want to be with people of like mind. That's a marker of security. People who we think like us feel safer to us. Now, for many in our UU communities, one of the things that's been true about Unitarian Universalism is that the denomination has been a safe place to be out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and increasingly as transgender. In a culture where those identities are set apart or oppressed. So Unitarian Universalism is a place where we're willing to take the risk of openly supporting the LGBTQ plus community by marching in parades, posting signs on our buildings, proclaiming our support, and remember, this is indeed a risk. This is a risk. It's a risk that we take. We have experienced vandalism, threats, and some of you know that at a recent Welcoming Congregation team online event, we had a really horrible Zoom bombing, like really bad. So there are risks that we take that we consider worth it because of the rewards of welcoming people into our community and into our broader community. So just as we take some risks gathering here today, those of you who are sitting physically in the room are taking certain risks that you believe are worth it or that you weigh in a certain way that allow you to show up. And other people are making different choices, and it's all okay. We all have to make our own personal choices about risk and reward. You probably know, though, from being in relationship with any other human being. How many of us are in a relationship with another human being? Every one of us in the universe, right? Whether that's a parent or a spouse, a partner, a child, a friend, a coworker. Relationships between human beings are inherently risky. They are constantly changing because we are constantly evolving, and they are constantly changing in response to the world. Just because you take a risk today and get past it with your partner or your kid or your friend or your boss or whoever, just because you take a risk today doesn't mean that tomorrow you're done and there will never be another risk. So human relationship requires ongoing courage in the face of personal and collective growth and change. There's no stopping place. We're never done with that. One of the wonderful gifts of COVID has been a heightened awareness of that fact. our complacency has been shifted aside a little bit. We have become acutely aware of what it means to be around each other. And that's true here. That's true with our welcome here, right? There are new health risks today that weren't here 2 years ago, right? And in fact, there are actually new and different risks today than there were 6 months ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago, right? The risks are constantly changing. And how much more true is that, really, of our evolving human social community, right? Our social reality. It's evolving at a phenomenal rate, okay? Our social reality is evolving at an incredibly fast rate. So as we come back together, we get to rejoice at re-entering our space, or we get to rejoice at the fact that we have evolved to the point where we can have a community in the room and a virtual community. People who are essential to this congregation, who aren't physically in the room with us, but who are with us, who are participating in this service. That's a huge evolution of our congregation that's happened in the last 21 months. So we come back changed. We are different. There's, of course, familiarity and security in this sacred space. It's called sanctuary for a reason. It's called a sanctuary because it's meant to be a safe place for us to be who we are. And there's also always risk and change because who we are is constantly changing. Our world is changing. We are growing and changing. So it is a sanctuary that is meant to be a safe place in which we can grow and change. We probably take emotional risks far more often than physical ones and far more often than we realize. But we don't usually acknowledge that. So think about it for a minute. Thinking about this book, thinking about our welcome. Think about the people who you know or do not know, people who are part of our community, people who are part of our lives, our families, that are changing and evolving in ways that we don't necessarily understand. People who have wide differences in their identities than what some of us grew up with, right? This is the point of reading a book like The ABCs of LGBT+. Because there is, unfortunately, in our world, an incredible separation and isolation for many people who have new and evolving gender, sexual, and affectual identities and orientations. The mainstream world still says that's not okay, still says that's different. It's evolving. Even that's changing some, right? We're starting to see in the media, we're starting to wonderfully see trans people in the media in wonderful ways. We're starting to see trans activism and all kinds of queer identities. I'm curious how many people in the room, when I say the word queer, kind of go, right? Many of us were taught that it's not okay to say the word queer, but it's actually a word that's embraced by many people in the community now. So, even if the pandemic ends, some version of ending of this pandemic, right, through vaccines or treatments or whatever, that doesn't mean that everything is predictable or the same. Our world is still changing. Our lives are still changing. We still need to be a sanctuary for change. Unitarian Universalism is a place where we can make it true that the mainstream tendency to think in binary ways, we can make it a place where that's not the case. We can be a place where our idea of welcome is bigger than that. Okay? We can be a place, even though there's a long way to go. We have a long way to go. That's why we have a welcoming congregation team to continue to help us grow and evolve in our welcome. So, question to ask yourself right now. We are all in very different places within ourselves around how safe and secure it feels to welcome completely different identities that we don't understand. We have personal histories and personal lives that influence that. We have had experiences in our past that influence our sense of risk and reward. We have stories that we've been told or told ourselves that affect our sense of risk and reward around expanding identities. So, before we get into any kind of discussions or debates about the analytical pros and cons of these things, which as you use, we have a tendency to want to do, right? Before we do that, before we can even hope to engage in conversations about those things with open minds and open hearts, we have to ask ourselves about risk. So throughout the pandemic, I have over and over again talked with people, leaders here, other UUs around the country, my own family and friends, about how their sense of risk or danger informs their decision-making and their judgments of other people. Okay? Think about that. How does your sense of personal risk inform your judgments of other people? The sense of risk is not, as you know if you've been paying attention over the last few months, is not necessarily rational. It's not logical half the time, right? We have different markers that help us decide where we feel safe and where we don't feel safe, and it's not always logical. Our sense of risk when we are faced with change and the unfamiliar is deeply personal, all right? It's wired to maybe our past experience with healthcare or with politics or government or family. So, Ashley Mardell's book is a chance to familiarize ourselves with some things that may be unfamiliar. Now, for some of us, they may be very familiar. For some of us, this may be absolutely easy. Our sense of risk may be incredibly small. For others of us, our sense of risk may be incredibly high. Okay? This is an opportunity to talk about with the people we love, with one another, and in a sanctuary that is meant to be a safe space for growth and change, to talk about our personal sense of risk as we explore new ways of being together. As we come back together today, taking risks for the reward of being in community, let us remember to expand our sense of who's included, our sense of welcome, to those that we may not necessarily feel safe with. That might include people who have a different identity than us. It might be people who have a slightly different theology than us. It might be people who have a slightly different politics than we do. These are all ways that we invite change and we welcome in growth in a way that can feel risky, but has very high rewards. This is a chance for us to fulfill our claim that we are a church of warm hearts, open minds, and caring hands. So let's make this return to our sanctuary a recommitment to actually making it a sanctuary, not just for what's familiar, but also for the new, also for growth, also for change. Now, during virtual coffee hour today, so if you want to participate in this conversation physically here, what we're going to do is we're going to meet in one of the big RE rooms around a table. And our virtual participants will actually be on a television screen, so we'll be able to see them and see each other, and we'll be able to have a conversation about that. And perhaps you can have that conversation, if not there, over lunch, or you can have that conversation over the course of the coming days or weeks with people you trust. But think about this. What does it mean for you to face the risk and consider the rewards of expanding your definitions of your community? The world never stops changing. We are constantly being presented with opportunities to become more of who we wish we could be, who we say we are. right? This is a chance for us to live more fully into our values. As we come back into this sanctuary, let us expand the welcome. Let us share the welcome of this place in ways that welcome those who have gender identities we've never heard of, relational identities that we don't understand, family identities that feel scary to us, all kinds of identities that we don't know how to make sense of, but are beautiful and amazing and courageous and wonderful and life-giving to this community. So we get to challenge ourselves to that. I invite you to contemplate that and welcome that possibility of the reward of the risk into your heart. May it be so.
And we get to have Sandra Thomas playing for us for the offering. Our Share the Plate partner for this quarter is MOVE, In Love. And to donate, you can do it online, or if you're here, we are actually taking a live offering. As always, 25% of undesignated funds go to our Share the Plate partner, 75% stays with the church. If you want yours handled differently than that, note it on your check.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Morgan Ringelspaugh. I use they, them pronouns. I am also part of the Welcoming Congregation Renewal team. One of the things we've done over the past year has been reading the names of those killed for being transgender or gender nonconforming. The Human Rights Campaign has gathered this information and provided this report since 2013. And unfortunately, 2021 has been a record-breaking year with 49 people killed just for being who they are. So in a moment, I'm going to read over these names. As throughout the year we've done this, we have the vase of rocks with the names on them. So I will be adding the rocks, each name as we go. The first name today, E.J. Boykin. Adalyn Evans. Taya Ashton. Shay Vanderpump. Tierra Marie Lewis. Miss Coco. Pooh Johnson. Desaya Monet. Kier Lepre Cartier. Mel Groves. Royal Poetical Stars. Zoella Zoe Rose Martinez. Joe Acker. Jesse Hart. Ricky Otomoro, also known as True Starlet. Markeisha Lawrence. Jenny DeLeon. Angel Naria. Danielle Thompson. And Chris Belhar. As I said, each rock represents a name, but more than that, it represents a life that was taken from us. One of the most important things in recognizing this is recognizing the risk that comes with being who you are sometimes. So I ask, as we go on throughout our day, we remember these people and remember why these conversations are so important.
Morgan, I'm going to ask you to do us a favor, because I know you're really fast at this. I want you to Google for us the name of Miss Nevada, please. I don't know if any of you have been paying attention to the news. Along with the risks, there are rewards. I don't know if anybody's paying attention to the beauty pageants lately. We're going to get this name. Cataluna Enriquez, Miss Nevada this year, is a trans woman, the first trans woman to become a Miss whatever state, to go on to the bigger pageants. Cataluna Enriquez is a victory, a huge victory for trans people. So even as we mourn the loss of people who have risked their lives and lost their lives to be authentic, to be who they truly are, what's true for them in their hearts, we also celebrate the victories in the LGBTQ plus community. This is a place of sanctuary, a place where we seek familiarity and also newness, growth. A place where we seek security and also the risks of change for the better. It is meant to be a home for the heart, for the mind, and the soul. which are always moving forward. Though we extinguish the chalice at the end of this time together, we carry with us the warmth of community, the light of seeking truth, including new truth, and the fire of commitment to our shared values. Let us carry those with us in our hearts, in our minds, and in the way we live our lives until we are together again. Go in peace.